Josina Machel, daughter of Graca Machel and Samora Machel, the first president of Mozambique, and the stepdaughter of the revered freedom fighter and global icon, Nelson Mandela, had a brief altercation with her boyfriend, Rufino Lichiso, in October 2015. The argument was about how to spend the rest of their day and where she could or could not go. For context, it was her mom's birthday, and her position was that the appropriate way to spend her time was with family. The dispute got violent, and it landed 3 blows, 2 to her eye and the other to the back of her head, and one of those punches erupted Josina's right cornea and exploded her retina. That's an eye in which she had had a transplant 19 years earlier. That incident left her with a bleeding eye socket. The case was taken to court, and Josina had since then been hoping that the justice system in Mozambique will punish her aggressor and give her desired closure on this matter. In 2017, a Mozambican court granted her prayers, but Rufino's sentence of 3 years was suspended, allowing him to pay a fine instead. Rufino neither served jail term nor paid the fine stipulated by the court. Instead, he appealed. On June 12, 2020, the Superior Court of Appeals in Mozambique overturned the 2017 decision, completely acquitting him. The court held that there were no witnesses to the crime and that it was unclear what the cause of her blinded right eye was. Our conversation with Josina Machel will focus on a movement to support her quest to not only appeal this decision, but also to launch a continental campaign in support of women like her who have suffered one form of gender-based violence or another. The objective is that while it may be unclear how the courts will rule, a continent-wide appeal can always help to dismantle the systems that not only put women in disadvantageous positions through their lives, but in fact pressure them into silence. Good morning, Josina Machel, and thank you very much for joining us on the morning show at Arise News. Well, I've tried to provide, by way of introduction, a summary of your experience, which is really very disturbing, and particularly the fact that you are not been able so far to get justice. But I would like you to take us through that experience. It's much better for our viewers to hear directly from you and not a summary of the experience. But I salute your courage and your determination.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. And thank you for having me on the show today. Yes, unfortunately, this incident has happened almost 5 years ago. And I have tried to put my trust in the justice system to punish this individual who was my partner then for beating me. The reality is gender-based violence is a crime in Mozambique and in many other African states. So I did go to the police, I went to the doctors, and my files kept on disappearing for a very long time. Eventually, after we managed to construe all the evidence, we then went to court, and our fate was not very different there. A fate, of course, that many other women also face in our continent, where documents keep on missing time and time again. Eventually, in February 2017, the court in Maputo, a lower court, actually decided that Rufino Licucu was guilty of gender-based violence with grievous bodily effect because I had lost my eye. And however, the sentence was the sentence was not effected at that time, and he appealed, was suspended, and he appealed. So in the past year, since 2017 to now, we've been on this process of the appeal. And on the 20th of June of this year, 2020, then the appeals court reverted the earlier sentence of guilty and has absolved Rufino Licucu of any wrongdoing or of domestic violence against me.
this is just mind-boggling. You are the daughter of the former president. Your family is powerful and influential, yet you didn't get justice. How did that make you feel?
You know, when I first went, immediately after the abuse, and I went to the doctors, I never really expected any treatment, any different treatment from any other woman. Rufino Likuka decided to take me to a public hospital instead of a clinic. And I just was worried about my eye. And when they asked me what happened, I just told the truth. I expected to be treated fairly because I thought at the time that women who are abused were given fair treatment and were treated accordingly. However, the reality is that it showed that in spite of me having the family background that I have, in spite of having the education and so on, I just don't get any of the preferential treatment at all. My process was treated like thousands of women, of Mozambican women are treated, like millions of African women in this continent are treated whenever they lodge a case of gender-based violence. The cases are ignored in many cases. Evidence is destroyed. The legal process in itself is extremely delayed, which exacerbates a lot of the re-victimization and the inability to heal. And eventually, as you can see, 5 years later, the higher court has actually reverted the earlier sentence. But my story is not different from others in this continent.
I mean, you are not just the former president's daughter. You are Samora Machel's daughter, the man that fought for the liberation. That was an inspiration to millions of Africans.
Yeah.
So you are not just the former president's daughter. I keep repeating that, and that's why I'm shocked. You are Samora Machel's daughter. And this shocks me at the culture of, of Mozambicans towards violence against women. You're also the daughter of Graca Machel that has fought so hard for the rights of women. I mean, while this case raged on, how did your mother feel? What effect did it have on your family? What effect did it have on you? And how are you coping with the fact that you're seeing a man go scot-free today and your eyes has been affected?
This case has changed the dynamics of my family forever. We, as a family like the Machels in Mozambique, have always trusted the authorities, given its respect, and ultimately really trusted and believed that they would do right. There would be justice. As it happens in families, I have to say, my brothers and my cousins were furious and kind of wanted to take justice by their own hands. But my mother was very strong in saying that, this is a country of rights. Women have rights. This is a country that has legislation and policies. And so we must trust the authorities to do the right thing. And so we ensured that we had all the evidence. We had all the reports from doctors. I had a confession from Mr. Likuku that he has beaten me. I had evidence. I had a solid case. However, being Samora Machel's daughter, being Graca Machel's daughter, and being Nelson Mandela's stepdaughter does not change the fact that I am a Black woman in Africa. I am a woman. And under patriarchal system, it doesn't really matter who you are. The fact that you are a woman means that you are already relegated to a certain position. And so institutions that are supposed to protect us at times are used and they are manipulated to oppress us even further and to put us and to treat us as second-hand citizens. irrespective of where you have been born, where you have been educated, and so on.
Well, I'd like to ask you about is it the Kuhluka movement that you set up to address the challenge of gender-based violence in society, and also a life project, and how much support you are getting from the Mozambican civil society. The justice system in Mozambique may have betrayed you and other women in Mozambique, but what level of support are you getting, and what's the response to the project on gender-based violence?
We, as a Kuhluka movement, we've been receiving immense response from our sisters and brothers in the civil society movement, and also have to say in some points within government and international organizations. The Kuhluka movement was created to specifically highlight the position of victims and survivors of violence, to ensure that my experience is not repeated by the thousands and millions of women in Mozambique and in the continent as well. So we have programs that are shaped to ensure that the first encounter with police and the medical doctors is alleviated, is lightened. We also do constant support groups to ensure that women have safe spaces where they can talk about it, they can be empowered, they can share knowledge and learn tools to cope. And you know, we have just launched a few weeks ago, anchored on the Kuhluka movement, we have launched the Justice for All Women, Justice for Josina campaign, which can be also used as justice for Ajua, for Tina, for Uwa in Nigeria, or for Tina in other parts of the world. And this is actually to highlight once again the treatment of the justice system, the gross treatment that survivors of violence go through. And it's also to highlight, to put a spotlight into the judicial system to ensure that it becomes more accountable and there's a lot more transparency in the way they deal with these cases that they get every single day.
Josina, where do you think that the advocacy should begin? Some people will say, we're having the conversation, but we're not having it with the right people. So where do you think that this advocacy and awareness should begin from? And I also want to ask you in general, the society, do you think we have a just and caring society towards survivors of gender-based violence?
Well, I'm going to start with your second question. We do not have caring societies that care, protect, and support victims and survivors of violence. But that stems from a society that does not acknowledge the gravity of gender-based violence as it should. And it stems from a society that looks at women in a devalued, as if they were not of the same value as men. And so what happens is that perpetrators of violence are given impunity. Men, let's say, men live in this society with impunity to kill, to maim, to beat, to burn, and to do of women as they wish to. So yes, we have started in the past 25 years from the Beijing conference. There has been a lot of work in terms of legislation passed around gender-based violence. But you know, the reality is only 22 countries actually have legislation on gender-based violence. There's still a lot of countries that have to have it. But it doesn't matter how much legislation we have. If in our families we are unable to sanction those that are abusive, we'll never be able to do anything because we keep on hiding them within our homes, within our communities, and hiding them from the police and from the legal system, and not putting pressure on these men who are abusive to stop being abusive, to repent, and to be better men in our communities. So the work still needs to be done on young women, on young men, first for the women to know the gender-based violence is not a language of love. It is an abuse and it is a crime. And for men to know that when you commit a crime, you need to be punished for it.
I also want to ask you this, Josina. Has there been any collaboration with, I don't know if in Mozambique there is an association of female judges and lawyers? Can they be brought on this? And is there any way your case can be taken a look at again? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's gone to the topmost court, then it's about done. But is there any way it can be taken a look at again with fresh evidence? And you said something that shocked me. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said all of a sudden your case file started missing. Even from the hospital leading up before you can file a case. Was there, some level of complicity in all of this? And was it the case that your boyfriend was quite a very powerful person in society that he could get all of this in his favor?
Yes, I believe he has connections with powerful people in society. And so they perhaps enabled him to, or emboldened him to be able to do that. But look, it's not that this case or what happened to me in terms of documentation missing doesn't happen to women in Mozambique. It happens every single day to women in Mozambique, in South Africa. I'm sure if we look at Nigeria, there would also be a number of women who say the documentation go missing. So it's not the surprise here, and I think your shock also comes from the fact that, yes, within the system, people that did recognize the name of Josina Machel were still able to collude with this kind of behavior. But the reality is that there are many women who have stood up to this and said, not in my name. There are associations of judges and lawyers who have stood up in the last months, and they have written documents in conjunction with civil society demanding that there is a relook into this issue and demanding that there is justice. Luckily, we have been able in the past week to submit our appeal to the Supreme Court, to the Supreme Court. And so in the next weeks, we will see what the Supreme Court does with all the evidence that we have presented, but most importantly, argue on simple issues such as the domestic violence. Yes, it happens in privacy, but it is a crime. It's already been criminalized in Mozambique. And so no court can ever use the argument that because this incident happened between me and my aggressor, it cannot be, it cannot be gender-based violence, it cannot be domestic violence. So that is the first infringement that the lower court actually performed, let's say, on a law that has already been enacted in Mozambique.
Well, in the event that after going to the Supreme Court upholds the ruling of the appeals court and finds again in favor of Rufino, how will you feel? Because there's also still that possibility. Will that discourage you in terms of what you are doing with your movement? And with regard to the Kuhluka movement, persons who are watching this interview who may want to access the movement, the NGO, how can they reach you? What's your website? And, are you asking for some other kinds of support from across the world?
Absolutely. I have to say that I was, when I looked at the decision of the lower court, I had to laugh. Although it was very serious, its decision was very serious. I laughed that a state could actually come up with those kind of excuses to absolve a human being. But it gave me a lot more strength because each time that passes, I understand a lot more what my sisters, my mothers, my friends in this continent go through on a daily basis. And so it has emboldened me. It has given me a lot more courage to stand up and to say, yes, we have to end gender-based violence. We have to eradicate gender-based violence in our lifetime. And for that, we need to ensure that we stand with each other, we galvanize grassroots, individuals, businesses, and so on to make sure that they support women who have been abused, that there is no impunity to perpetrators of violence, and that, of course, the judicial system does right for those women who have been abused. And so it doesn't matter at this point what any other court can decide. I will not stand back. I will continue struggling because I know that the reality of Ajwa, the reality of Stefofatso, and the reality of Khadija, for example, are the same. These are women who have been abused. There will be other women who will be abused. And I will stand strong with my voice and my position to enable and ensure that these stories are validated and the justice is served. And so through the Kuhluka movement, which you can find on www.kuhluka.org, there's a lot of information and you can communicate with us. And at the same time, we also are on social media as Justice for All Women. So it's on Twitter, it is on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and it's called Justice for All Women. And it is a Pan-African movement. We want to identify more cases of women who have not been served justice, just like me and other women, but we want to bring up a movement and put a spotlight on these cases and see whether we can take it to higher court and we can find resolution that allows women to heal. And it shows that Africa does take gender-based violence as a serious issue.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's really commendable. But let me ask you, are there lessons from your experience that you would like to share with other women? Because we live in a society where there's a lot of pressure and a lot of people feel like, to be single or to be unmarried is a curse. And so they try to hold on to that relationship no matter what they are dealing with. Were there signs that you saw? What are those lessons? What are those stories that nobody really tells you, And so these women, they live with the violence and they cover up for these men just because of the pressure from society.
Yes, they are definitely signs that we need to look at. The most important one is one that it's controlled. But the way we are socialized to believe that if a man exerts a lot of control through your movements and everything that you do is because he loves, he cares, and it's a sign even of jealousy. No, abuse starts exactly like that. When you objectify and you identify a human being as one of the objects that you have to control and you do not allow to have freedom. I look back now and I realize that there was a level of control in my relationship and I was not actually aware. And that then led to a situation where when I disagree as to where I was going to spend the rest of the night with Rufino, he then beat me up. And to continue his abuse, he continued manipulating, he continued intimidating because it was a relationship. He knew he had access to my life, to my phones, into everything. And that kind of attempt to control still existed or went on for quite some time. I encourage women always to talk about it. Do not think that one slap will end up there. There is a cycle of violence. The cycle of violence goes into tension, the incident, the honeymoon, and back into tension. So when a slap happens, make sure that you document it. Make sure you tell your family. It might take some time, yes, of course, to garner the courage to say, I want to move out of this relationship. But you need to record every little incident that occurs so that when you decide to go to the police or you decide to report to the authorities, you have evidence, because that is what you need the most. And of course, lean on people that believe in you. They are people that believe in survivors. Get informed as to what are the organizations in your local area, in your community, that actually support victims and survivors of violence. And they will then allow you to do a journey and to support and advise as to how to do the journey from victimhood to survivorhood. And we as a Kuhluka movement and as the campaign Justice for All Women are here. We are open to help and to ensure that your journey is not the journey of Josina, of Karabo, of Adwa, and so many others in this continent.
Two things. You've been very inspiring this morning, to say the very least. Two things, just in about 1 minute. Number one is, what would you say to a young girl out there that is going through this? And secondly, have you been able to find love again?
That is an interesting. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. It's a process because, you know, abuse corrodes a lot of who you are. And in order to trust again, you need to find a special being that understands that you have come from extreme pain, you have come from being broken into pieces, and you have rebuilt yourself. But of course, there's still a lot of, there are a lot of defenses that one puts you know, ahead of us. And so it takes time, but yes, absolutely, it is possible. And for young girls, I always say, please, when our mothers tell us, trust your instinct, you should always trust your instinct.
Well, thank you very much, Josina Machel, and all the best with the Kuhluka movement and your engagements out there in Mozambique and elsewhere. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.